Greetings to everyone who decided to join us tonight. Thank you so much for being a part of this event. Tonight we are going to have a Create in Community panel discussion, What Good Are the Arts? The Value of Access. This event is hosted by the University of Pennsylvania Office of Social Equity and Community and co-sponsored by Penn's Sachs Program for Arts Innovation and Penn Live Arts. The event description is as follows. The arts can impact not only our general quality of life, but also our physical and emotional health. Still, they're sometimes undervalued. Why and how should people of all ages make more room in their lives for the visual and performing arts, whether as observers and supporters, or as learners and creators? Is it ever too late to start? No. What are Philadelphia art institutions doing to address barriers and increase access? And what can Philadelphians do at the community level to uplift local artists? Let's begin. First, our panelists today are, I'm going to switch this to the order from me over. Okay, Erlina Ortiz, General Manager, Co-Artistic Director, and Playwright for the Power Street Theater. Erlina Ortiz is a Dominican-American playwright and theater maker from Reading, PA, who earned a BA in theater from the Temple University School of Theater, Film, and Media Arts. Her heartfelt and humorous plays have been presented across the U.S. and with Power Street Theater, which she co-founded. In 2022, her play La Egoísta was selected for the LTC Comedy Carnival in Denver and went on to win the 2022 ATC National Latine Playwriting Award and had its hometown premiere at the Philadelphia Theater Company in October 2024. Her musical, Siluetas, was developed for the O'Neill National Musical Theater Conference and premiered with Power Street Theater in June 24, where it was nominated for 7 Barrymore Awards. She's also been featured in Philadelphia's Al Dia news magazine. Napoleon Gladney, Director of Theatrical Programming and Presentations for Ensemble Arts Philly. Napoleon Gladney, originally from LA, earned a BFA in dance performance at Chapman University. He has a diverse performance and arts management background spanning seasons and international tours with dance companies, including Odyssey Dance Theater, The Dance Cartel, and Backhouse Dance. National Broadway tour credits include Wicked the Musical as dance captain, swing, and chistery understudy. As a choreographer and instructor, he has taught classes and set choreography on dance companies, teams, and university programs and studios around the U.S. As an arts administrator, he's held roles in nonprofit organizations in New York and Los Angeles, and has served as the audience development manager and the cultural equity producing and programming manager for the Musco Center for the Arts at his alma mater, Chapman University, and as executive director of LA Contemporary Dance Company. Martha Lucy, Deputy Director for Research, Interpretation, and Education for the Barnes Foundation. Martha Lucy oversees the Barnes Foundation's research efforts, working with colleagues across departments to produce new knowledge about the permanent collection and the institution's history. She also leads all education endeavors, which are many, including adult classes, academic programs, K-12 programs, docents, and archives. She holds a PhD from New York University's Institute of Fine Arts. As an art historian, she specializes in 19th century French art, modern European art, and visual culture. She's the co-author of Renoir and the Barnes Foundation and has published articles and essays on topics ranging from early charcoals to contemporary installation art. Last but not least, Tim Rommen, University of Pennsylvania Professor of Music and Africana Studies, Professor in Interdisciplinary Studies, and our inaugural Vice Provost for the Arts. Tim Rommen earned a PhD in ethnomusicology from the University of Chicago and has taught at Penn since 2002. He's the author of Funky Nassau, Roots, and Representation in Bahamian Popular Music, as well as Make Some Noise, Gospel Music, and the Ethics of Style in Trinidad, which won the Best Book of the Year in Ethnomusicology. He received a Guggenheim Fellowship in 2016 for his ongoing work, Sounding a Borderless Caribbean, the Creole Geographies of Dominican Popular Music. In 2023, he received the highest teaching award at Penn in the School of Arts and Sciences, and he has held a range of top leadership roles in the Department of Music and the Department of Africana Studies. Please help me welcome our distinguished panelists. When they're all so accomplished, the introductions take a long time, so thank you for your patience. Let's talk about the power of the arts. So there's a field called positive psychology, where rather than focus on fixing something that's wrong, we focus on getting above zero and flourishing and thriving. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson identified a top 10 positive emotions, and one of them is awe. Being awestruck, feeling wonder and reverence, getting chills in the presence of something overwhelming. It's often associated with nature and the arts. What is one time when you experienced awe connected with the arts?
The first one that comes to mind for me was the very defining moment in my appreciation of the arts, which was the first time that I saw the musical In the Heights, which is probably a little stereotypical. It's a musical about a Dominican, and then I'm Dominican, so of course. But it really was the first time, like, as a theater person, that I saw a show that felt so close to home. And I was seeing it they were doing it at the Walnut Street Theater. This was a long time ago, but I had not really seen that much live theater. Even as a theater lover and theater person, I had not seen like a lot of professional live theater at that point, just like high school and things like that. And it was also community night, so there was like pretty much the majority of the audience were other Latina people and Dominicans and Puerto Ricans and everything. So the vibe was good. And then there's a one song that Nina sings. It's a bilingual song where she's talking about how she's come back from college and she's not sure. I think she's like dropping out, or she's not sure if she's gonna go back because she's just feeling so left like strange in that environment of this Ivy League institution. And there's this one lyric that she's the note that she hits with it, and the music and the chorus of the people around her when she sings it. She says, "I'm the one who made it out." And I'll never forget like the moment that I was listening to that, and I just like was like bursting into tears, and I cried for the rest of the show, like in a good way, you know? And that was, I think, a moment of just like my heart opening up in this way of being seen and feeling seen, and then having not even having the words or emotion really to process it, but then like experiencing it through this music was definitely awe-inspiring.
It's amazing. One for me, as you heard, I toured with Wicked, a small show that you may have heard of. I toured for almost 8 years in my 20s, and doing the show 8 times a week, it gets a little bit repetitive. Did it all over the country and in Canada. And something that was awe-inspiring to me, actually, with the production in Pittsburgh, there was a performance that we did where it was sponsored by a large company, but they bought out the whole theater and made it fully accessible, being that we invited family members, support givers, and children and adults living with various disabilities that don't have the ability to go to theater or music or live experiences because of the transportation challenges, the social challenges of being shushed or told what to do in a space. The stairs, all of those things were ripped away and taken away, and so it was a really beautiful experience to have everyone that worked for the theater, everyone in the company, from the box office to the people parking cars, including the cast, was all working on this performance from a perspective of being accessible. So there were modifications to the show. Lights were half on. We had quiet spaces, fidget spinners. People can, respond as they need to verbally without any issues or being shushed by the audience or anything like that. And being able to be in that space and sit in the back of the house and watch, and have conversations with the families, it makes me emotional. To parents that say they've never been able to take their whole family to a performance before because they have to go separately. And being able to be in this space where everyone is able to experience this thing for the first time was really gratifying, and it just reminded me of why we do what we do. So that was an awe-inspiring moment. It was just a full accessibility, which is such a minimal thing, you would think. Just people being able to have the experience that a lot of us are able to have by just walking into a space they aren't able to. So yeah, that was an awe-inspiring moment for me.
This is such a fun question. I think for me it was when I did a semester abroad in college, and I got to go to Paris. That wasn't where I did my semester, but I traveled to Paris and went to Notre Dame, and had never been out of this country before. And when you go into a cathedral like that, it's supposed to be awe-inspiring. Like, that's the whole point of it. You're supposed to feel the presence of God. And I'm not even a religious person, but I was overwhelmed. And just even thinking about it now, it gives me chills. I was just overwhelmed, of course, by the beauty, but also just thinking about how much time it must have taken to build that thing. Decades and decades. And I don't know that I can't even think of a sort of modern day equivalent to something like that in our culture. But also just the way that it was, that it's part of everyday life. You know, not that people are constantly going into Notre Dame, but this idea that art was just something that you could just sort of walk in or walk past and experience. You didn't have to, you know, pay a ticket and go into a museum.
Yeah, I love this question too. I love the word awe. It's, you know, the arts are so fundamentally relational, and so they are especially good at helping us remember how we're connected. And so, you know, that can take many forms. It's hard for me to pick one, you know, but I've had moments when I feel like I'm stumbling around the edges of the ineffable, like I can't put words on what I'm feeling, right? There have been times when I've really been just made so aware through art of one practice or another of my connection to community, like, wow, this is bigger than me, you know? And there's been moments when I've been really aware of just how small I am in the grand scheme of the universe, and art helps us kind of translate that for ourselves, I think, in a really powerful way. So awe to me is this sort of like the byproduct of art really helping us understand our connection to the world around us. And so for me, awe is sort of a constant companion when I'm experiencing the arts. So it's maybe a cheap way of not answering the question, but yeah, awe is for me a kind of a mainstay emotion as I go through artistic experiences, whether I'm playing or witnessing or making or connecting with others. Yeah.
Perfectly acceptable answer. Well, because art is so uniquely positioned to inspire such a range of emotions in all of us, and we know that the arts enrich our lives. We all are aware of that. But there's some things everyone might not know about the power of the arts, so bear with me for a moment as I share some information according to various research studies. Looking at art in a museum, just looking at it, can lower your blood pressure and lower the stress hormone cortisol. Museum visits can even reduce the self-reported intensity of chronic pain. Listening to music can stimulate the brain areas for reward and euphoria, can enhance mood, and diminish the perception of pain. Music making can increase not only happiness, but also tolerance of uncertainty. Art making can put you in a flow state of calm and focus, and also lead to greater self-regulation of emotion. Participating in theater can increase empathy, and also lead to greater self-regulation of emotion. Writing lyrics can reduce negative emotions and increase feelings of empowerment. And when done in groups, participation in the arts can lead to stronger feelings of social connectedness and reduce social isolation. In short, the arts are good for us. And that's not even mentioning how dance, visual art, and music are used in all sorts of therapy, physical and emotional therapy. This is especially good for all of us to know in challenging times, and we might be in some challenging times. So tell us something about the power of the arts in action. How have you witnessed the arts change or impact someone, whether at the individual level or perhaps in how a group has changed or been brought together? Anyone can go.
Yeah, sure. I'll start this time. So I think one of the secret powers of the arts is that it convenes us. It has the power to convene us, and so for me, that really, whether we're experiencing art by making it or experiencing art as witnesses to the art making or the art, I think the power that art has when we're engaged with art in whatever capacity is to help us potentially change our minds, potentially kind of reposition ourselves vis-a-vis the world and each other, see each other, recognize our common humanity, really rethink what it means to be human together. And so for me, a lot of my engagement with the arts over the years has been in classrooms, and the thing that has been most rewarding and kind of powerful about those kinds of exchanges is the ways in which art unexpectedly often will afford an entire classroom access into a newfound way of being in the world and thinking about the world. And so for me, that's really one really kind of concrete way that art really kind of makes a difference for individuals, but also for communities.
I can go. So my theater company, Power Street Theater, we have free classes for adults that we started in 2018. And so whatever age you are, whatever your experience is with the arts, you're welcome to join the class. And they're often very bilingual as well. So meeting folks where they are in terms of language access as well. And so I won't share her name, but there's a student who's now a 3-time student. She just completed her 3rd time taking one of our classes, and we have different types of classes: poetry, storytelling, performance. Now we're gonna have a cooking class and a dancing class that are coming up. So just kind of creating like an entry-level way for folks to get access. And this woman, she's an immigrant. She had her children taken from her through like a rich husband that was the person she married when she came to the United States. Like, she's been through just so many things in her life that are just unbelievable and horrible. And she has now dedicated to come to our class for 3 years in a row. And at their culminating event a couple of weeks ago, I like went up and gave her a big hug, like, congratulations, you did. And it's funny because when she first started doing the class, she did all her stuff in Spanish, and now she's like, she also kind of uses the class a little bit to practice her English. And she looked at me so seriously when I was like, I'm so glad you took the class again. And she goes, I have to take this class. When I come to this class, it's the only time I have peace. And I was like, okay, and so it was just kind of a moment to highlight. Like, she said it with such a serious look of like, this is my oxygen to be able to come to this. So that was just a moment of realizing, like, wow, like, this is what it can do. And I could tell that the peace that was coming off of her in that moment of just like, the regulation that she was able to have by being in like a community of artists and a place where she was like her full self was accepted, because what she was performing was her personal story about everything that she's been through. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with everything that was said. And yeah, I think the arts provide a space for empathy, for shared spaces, for community building, as a viewer, but also as a practitioner. And I think you spoke to that a little bit. Like, there's so many benefits from being someone that participates in the arts other than just being a viewer or an audience member. And I think there's so many benefits that a lot of artists understand. But I think it's really interesting to look at ways that we can translate that to everyone else. If you don't label yourself an artist, I would challenge that, because I think we have artistic experiences and practices in our daily lives that we don't even acknowledge sometimes. So yeah, I like to look at those benefits and those things too. Yeah.
I'm racking my brain because I have, I spend a lot of time in classroom situations too. We offer classes at the Barnes, and I'm frequently teaching them or kind of like observing them. And I get, lots of notes from students saying how much they enjoyed the class, and that there's tons of sort of anecdotal. But I think the one that I want to, that first came to mind was a recent experience that I had with my son, who is 13, and who is, glued to his phone. And I've been talking to him a lot recently about mental health and sort of, you have to be in charge of your own mental health. Like, I can't always be there to say, like, it's time to get off the phone and blah, 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 that kind of thing. And he has said to me, like, yeah, I don't feel good if I spend too long just kind of scrolling. And I was like, Sam, come on, we're getting out of the house. We went to the art museum, and we just walked around and looked at stuff. And I have to hand it to him that he admitted that he enjoyed it. He was like, I feel better now. So that's my little just personal anecdote. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And I'm glad he admitted it. Yeah. That's impressive. As people who have careers in the arts, you all have experience and perspective that are very intriguing to many of the rest of us. What have you found to be the most surprising, the most challenging, and the most rewarding elements of having a career in the arts? So we'll start with the most surprising.
I think the most surprising thing to me, and this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and that we talked about in our little pre-discussion, is the way that as people who work in the field, we have to sort of tie ourselves into knots. I don't even know if that's the right expression. But we have to do a lot of work to prove that the arts are impactful. And we have to try to quantify their impact. And I'm thinking specifically of the school groups that come to visit the Barns. And we get funding from lots of different grant makers, and like PICO gives us money, and we're extremely grateful to that, to that. Okay, but there is this sort of demand that we prove that there was some sort of learning that happened during the museum visit. That we need to demonstrate that this museum visit is going to help students with their math skills, or is going to help students, we have to connect it somehow to the curriculum, that it's going to help students with their science skills. And I think that that's all valid, and there are ways that we can make those connections. But sometimes I'm just like, isn't it enough that they're coming and they're seeing this resource, and they're understanding that this space is here and for them? And I think it's just an example of sort of what we're talking about, kind of the devaluing of the arts, and trying to find other ways to attach value to it, where it's like, what about just sort of the humanity? So that to me, like when I first learned that we had to demonstrate the impact in these kind of quantifiable ways, was the most surprising thing when I started at the Barnes about 10 years ago.
That leans more toward what I think of as the enduring challenge, but
that's okay.
But
you're allowed
it is
to connect
also
them.
surprising. It is also surprising. So for me, what's been most surprising is the persistent kind of notion that in order to access the arts, you have to somehow already be amongst the initiated, or somehow have talent. Like, if you don't have talent, what are you doing? This isn't for you. And to me, that has always been really surprising. Why would we think of the arts as anything other than a field of play and experimentation, and a chance to engage in new ways with the world and with how we think and what we make? So to me, that's always been very surprising.
There was a great piece called, I think, like The Joy of Mediocrity or The Power of Mediocrity, something like that, in the New York Times, that was about releasing yourself from the prison of expectation that you have to be good at things already in order to feel the right to do them. And it eliminates the opportunity to explore and find joy and discover. So thank you for that.
Yeah, yes, challenging, especially running a small arts organization, of just like constantly having to quantify why it's important and like why we deserve the money for it. I think, I feel like there's a further question that's about that coming up, so maybe I'll save everything I want to say about that for later. But so yes, challenging is just like accessing the funds and like proving the worth, especially when it's like so hard. Even now, when like you see the city is, or there's different organizations that are fighting for the city to up the budget right now for the arts to $6 million, and like even in that framing, in that language, It's like, because look how much money it'll bring to the city. Like, it still has to always be framed around, you know, late stage capitalism, and just like money, money, money. And that's just like, that's not how you quantify how arts act. I love the studies that you showed of just like the different ways now that we're actually getting data to show, but it's also like kind of ridiculous because you're like, do we really need this data? The arts, the thing that we've been doing since we were in caves, is important to being a person and being healthy. So yes, that's challenging. And then surprising, somewhat connected, would be just whether you're an individual artist or running a small organization like I am, it's just the thing that they don't teach you when you're in school, which is the administration of your own art. I don't know how many artists I know that are amazing, beautiful artists, but like they're never gonna get further ahead in their careers because they don't know how to answer an email. They don't know how to submit a W-9. They don't know how to put their calendar together in a way that makes sense to them so that they don't miss a meeting. And that breaks my heart. So there's people that I think are beautiful, amazing artists that I want to work with, but if I've already tried to work with you a couple times and you show up late every time to the meeting because you just can't get your stuff together, it's really hard to like feel that trust of wanting to continue to bring you on. And I'm very grateful that I am somehow a very mostly organized person. And that besides, I think being a pretty talented artist, being an organized administrator is actually probably part of the reason why my career has gotten where it is. And then most rewarding, I would just say the community. Like, I love my people. Like, I love my theater people. I love my community. I love going out to an opening night. I love just like being that person to create opportunities for folks to come together. That is the thing that just like feeds me and feeds me and feeds me, is the community that I get to do my art with.
A thing that was surprising and is surprising and remains a challenge. In a role like mine, being a presenter, a producer, someone that books talent often and curates, I don't have a lot of conversations about the art itself. I have a lot of conversations about the expense of the art, which was a really shocking, jarring thing coming from the artist side. Be like, oh, I'm on the other side, I'm gonna do all these things, we talk about art, it's gonna be great, I get it, da-da-da. And like, that's like the last thing I get to talk about. And that is a challenge ongoing, and I have those conversations with artists often too. It's like, I understand the work, we don't have to talk about it, I get it, I know, I see it, I get it, it's good. But there's this other side to that, and that's the other thing, the business side of the arts, and the nonprofit arts sector, if you will, is a business, even though it's nonprofits and arts, those things that we don't associate with commerce, but they're very much entrenched. Yeah, and so those, how those are intertwined, how to separate those out, how do we talk about value in these spaces, who asserts the value, and what those dollars and cents are, like very surprising thing and challenges that keep going, yeah.
And I guess the rewarding piece that you guys want to touch on before we move on.
Sure. I'll just say that for me, the most rewarding thing about the arts is the kind of ability to consistently and constantly rediscover what it means to be human, both for myself, but also in dialogue with others. That to me is the most rewarding part of the arts.
What everybody else said. Really, truly.
Being able to learn about other people's perspectives and experiences through art and see how they're so universal and connected to my own experience has been something that's been really rewarding, and being able to work across different mediums and in different venues and in different ways, seeing those like threads of humanity that are always there has been really powerful to me and sustaining.
One thing that's rewarding is being in Philadelphia. And not that we're biased, but it is true. Philadelphia has a tremendous breadth and depth of arts-related resources. But we're also a major American metropolitan area with many of the same challenges as others across the nation. People from all walks of life make this city and this nation what they are. But there is unequal access to resources across those different walks of life. So because unequal access to the arts means unequal access to all the benefits we were just talking about, what are you or your organization doing to address some of those barriers to the arts and to increase access in Philadelphia?
So at Ensemble Arts Philly and the Philadelphia Orchestra, things that we're looking at to increase access, we're looking at what the barriers for entry are. I think a first place that people like to look is ticket prices. Is it expensive for people to go to the theater or dance or music or those things? So we're looking at how we can eliminate or really lower that barrier. Different types of ways to engage with community members based on their need to get into shows. Also talking about accessibility, and I was talking about disability accessibility, really important to us. A new thing that we've implemented is working with an organization called Culture House, in that we have all of our front of house and box office team members trained to work with folks with different abilities. And we also offer kits and have silent spaces in all of our venues when we have performances, so that if people need accessibility kits with fidget spinners, they have headphones, they have different things that support them with shows. We also go out of our way to make like pre-access kits and informational sheets about shows for our venues, for folks that are coming for the first time, to eliminate some of those barriers. That fear is a big barrier for people. I've never been here before. What's it gonna be like? Do I fit here? Will it be able to accommodate me and my family's needs? So being able to lay out very clearly, like, if you have this need, this is how it's met. Don't have to worry about this. What you thought about theater and being shushed, don't worry about that. Wear whatever you want, it's okay. You know, doing those types of things just to really use narrative and storytelling, another part of what we do in the arts here, to retell what a theatrical experience can be for people, and reframe it for people is really helpful and important. Yeah, we're also looking at education and how we can become a part of people's lives when they're children and when they're youth and when they're going through their education journey K through 12. Something that we're looking at is currently we're working with most schools in the city, in the district, if you will, on having every student within the school district come at least one time to one of our spaces. We have a new goal to change that to 3 times. So we're really trying to incorporate more arts into our public education system as it's being cut, and filling that gap as well. We're also putting teaching artists into schools, offering specific programs in jazz and theater and classical music to get people interested young in those entry points. Yeah, just looking at different ways. We're looking at entry, and then even looking at programming itself, because I do programming, you know, looking at entryways into, say, classical music. Maybe an entryway into classical music might be you going to see Star Wars, you know, performed by the orchestra, versus going to see Rachmaninoff, you know. Talking about like jazz, looking at something like I booked for next season, for instance, in our jazz series, I have 8 Big Band, Grammy Award winning group that does jazz orchestrations of video game scores. That could be a really great win for people to, you know, experience jazz music for the first time, but they're really interested in gaming and in online presence. So we're looking at different entryways in, and we're finding that people are converting into other art forms in like 40 to 50%, which is really cool when they come to something that they're really interested in that might be tied to something they're connected with, and then find ways to connect them in other ways. So just a few ways that we're looking at.
Accessibility is really at the core of everything that we do with Power Street Theater. Some of the ways that this presents itself is all of our programming is free or pay what you decide. So right away, that barrier to entry is eliminated. We do a lot of culture setting for our audience, of just like literally being like, if it's funny, you can laugh. If you're sad, you can cry. If you need to use the bathroom, get up whenever you want to. I'm a tiny bladder person, so I do get a lot of anxiety when I go to see a show and they're like, the show runs an hour and 40 minutes with no intermission, and then I have a seat right in the middle, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, so I like to always say, like in our opening speech, like if you gotta get up and go to the bathroom, it's right over there, just come back, like be, you know. We also always make sure to like say, you know, considering the topics of the different shows that we present, like there could be potentially activating themes. And so we always tell people, like, if you need to leave the space, you can leave, you can come back whenever you're ready, you're always welcome back. We pretty much always have food at our events, so that, you know, if the event's at 7, then you know if you're coming to a Power Street event, you get there at 6:30, there's gonna be food, and it's usually Latin food, and it's delicious. And that makes people feel like they're being welcomed into like their grandmother's home, and it's like a little bit more cozy and homey versus just like, I'm here to be quiet and serious at an event. And we sort of have like a rolling start usually as well, because like our community is not gonna be there at 7 o'clock. Like we know they're gonna be there at 7:15 to 7:20, so like why even stress out pretending like we're gonna start at 7? So that's kind of something that we just like try to always incorporate, of just like we sort of know that we're gonna like have activity and mingling beforehand, so that we're not having this like stressful start at the top. And when the funding is available, we usually like to have childcare available at our events, if depending on the space where we're having the event. And if we're able to get the funding, then that's always one of the first things that we go for our classes or for culminating events or shows. It's just like having some sort of childcare option. We partnered for our musical in 2024 with Treehouse Books, which was like an amazing partnership because they were right down the street from where our performance was happening. So the parents were able to go like drop their kids off at the Treehouse and know that there was going to be like a licensed babysitter there to like have them and then come enjoy the show, and then they can pick the kid up afterwards. So those are just like some of the, one of the ways we used to have a translator on staff before the pandemic that would translate everything into Spanish, and then she moved to California, and so then after that I started translating everything, and so much work to translate everything. So that's one of the areas where we're really like trying to work on getting more, accessibility, is just making sure that all of everything that we have is English and in Spanish.
Yeah, accessibility is also at the core of what the Barnes does. And if you go back to our founding, which was in 1922, Albert Barnes was frankly just fed up with elitist museum culture and wanted to create a place where he called sort of regular, everyday people, the plain people, which is not, sounds insulting, but that's the word he used, where plain people could learn about art, and it was just really important to him, and so it started as a school, and a lot has changed in the way that we run things now, but that original mission is still kind of at the core. And I think that there are so many different ways that we really try to make the collection and our programming accessible. And I mean, the first thing, probably the biggest impact thing that we do is a free day once a month. So first Sunday of every month is free for the collection and the special exhibitions. But also, we've been doing a lot online. We offer classes, and we have for 100 years, that teach people, whoever wants to learn, about the history of art, but also visual literacy. So teaching people, just kind of giving people the basics for how to look at something, how to talk about something, how to talk about art, because people worry that they just don't have the language. And so we offer these classes. They were always in person, and now 75% of what we do is online. And I will say that when we made, that not surprisingly happened during the pandemic, and when we first started doing it, I was thinking like, this is, I don't know, I was unsure, because nothing, it's all about being with the object, right, and the in-person experience with the work of art, but when you really start thinking about it, it's like, that's not being accessible if you're insisting that people have to be with the real work of art. Like, what if somebody doesn't have the means to travel here, or they live halfway across the world, or they're not physically capable? So we've really leaned into doing, as much as we can virtually, and we offer these classes. We offer like 60 to 70 online classes every year, and we have students enrolling all over the world, and I really have become a believer in online arts education, like also understanding the drawbacks. I mean, but it's better than, I'm not going to say it's better than nothing, but it is. And we also, these are paying classes, but we offer scholarships, and we've been talking about the financial pressures on cultural institutions, which are real. But whenever we can, we really try to make things free.
And before we go, I will note, as far as digital resources, those studies I was talking about earlier with the benefits of looking at art, they've studied that digitally as well. You can look at something, you can look at a painting on your phone, or you can look at a painting on your screen and still derive some of the physical stress reduction benefits. So that's something anyone can do from anywhere if you have access to the internet. So we appreciate institutions like the Barnes making their collections available for view online.
Yeah, so the Office for the Vice Provost of the Arts is new. It's only about a year old. And so we've had a chance, and it's a first for Penn, so we've had a real chance to kind of think about what kinds of things we're really going to kind of lean into early on in our work. And so when we're thinking about accessibility, we're thinking really about a couple of different kind of arenas or registers. One is, like, who's able to access the arts on campus? Who thinks of the arts as a viable pathway through and a potential career possibility? And so what would it look like to lower barriers for folks who might otherwise be like, nope, I need a like actual paying job when I get out. I need to care for my elders, whatever, right? So low-income students, first-gen students, students for whom art was a passion in high school and they feel like they have to give it up when they get to Penn because they need to do something else. How can we make Penn a place that people come for the arts? So that's the first kind of area of kind of thinking through what access might mean and equity might mean for our student body. But then the other aspect of it for us in our office right now is thinking a lot about what it means to be a good neighbor through the arts. Like, how can we partner with our surrounding communities? How can we think about what it means to really have sustainable partnerships that if not kind of blur the boundaries between campus and community, maybe instead redefine what community means actually, and redefine it in a big tent way so that we are actually thinking together about what access looks like. And of course, our individual arts units are thinking about access in many of the ways that we've just heard. You know, how do we make the space conducive to as many different kinds of, kind of approaches and perspectives as possible? How does our programming reflect that? All of those things are in play as well for us. But the kind of big top line kind of thinking about access right now for us is, what can we do to lower barriers for our students, and what can we do to kind of redefine who we're talking about when we talk about community so that we can really think together about access?
One thing I'll note, shout out to one of our co-sponsors, Penn Live Arts. We love the Kimmel Center, it's great, but we have Penn Live Arts, which is at the Annenberg Center, a block from where you're sitting. It's an amazing performing arts venue, and you may not have known that they have a program called West Philly Welcome, where West Philadelphia neighbors can get tickets for $15 to $25 the week before most performances. So that's another example of trying to be a good neighbor in terms of access to the arts. So beyond Philadelphia, the UK. Why the UK? Let's talk about this real quick. The UK has something called social prescribing, or arts on prescription, that some people might not have heard about. Healthcare professionals actually prescribe things like visits to concerts, music lessons, art museum visits. And for one group of patients in the UK, participation was associated with a 37% decrease in primary care visits and a 27% decrease in hospital admissions. This is amazing. There have been a few pilots in the US, including some similar things, museum visits, also nature walks, things of that nature. And the results are promising. So you may hear more about these things here in the US. But the key is it's giving people a push to participate in the arts in ways they might not have, and then they're loving it. The response has been really enthusiastic for people who want to continue. So what are some things you may have heard about outside of Philadelphia, or organizations in Philadelphia that aren't yours, but other efforts to promote the arts to expand access? And you don't all have to respond, but anybody who would like to can share.
I'm really excited because I just got invited to the opening of it. But there's a new theater that is called the People's Theater. Well, they've existed for a while, but they are now having a space, like a really state-of-the-art theater that is opening in the Heights, in Washington Heights, in New York. The People's Theater. So that's just like an example. And the woman who does it, she's been running the company just similar to Power Street, partnering with different spaces and just renting out spaces for 20, 25 years. So it's pretty inspiring. And she could have put this theater quote unquote like in the off-Broadway area. Like she could have done it like everybody else and been like, I'm gonna do this in the core of town because that's where everybody's gonna go see my theater. And instead she used her resources to like open the theater in the neighborhood of Washington Heights. So I'm really excited about that because that like is something that has not existed in that neighborhood. Is like a state-of-the-art theater where, and all the work that they do is about telling multicultural stories. So shout out to Amino Lora, also a Dominican woman, who's opening the People's Theater in the Heights in New York.
Right on. I think of Express Newark as a really innovative art space. It's a kind of a rehabbed or kind of redesigned old store, essentially, a big department store, and it houses academic programs. It houses kind of collaborative research with community. It houses artists from the community, and so it's just kind of community arts commons, basically, that does programming that brings both community and university affiliated folks into the same space, and it kind of co-creates. So that to me is like a really exciting model. I hope that we can do something like that here at Penn.
Locally, Opera Philadelphia made the news a few seasons ago by just doing $15 tickets for all of their performances, which is extremely, extremely accessible. And they've been selling out of all of their performances since they made that announcement, which I think is a really groundbreaking thing, especially in the opera field.
Cool. The role of artificial intelligence, or AI, is controversial. On one hand, it does increase access to the creation process in a conversation about access. However, it's trained on the art of human artists without their consent. So it's sticky. What are your thoughts on the use of AI? I'm seeing some facial expressions. And again, not everyone has to respond, but if anyone would like to share any comments, because we'd be remiss not to acknowledge that that's something that's happening right now.
I don't have anything like great to say about it. I mean, I'm honestly super depressed about it because I'm a writer and I feel like AI can write better than I can at this point. You know, so that's been very, I can't even really get my head around it. In some ways, it's so enormous that we're at this point in the world. I worry about, I was just grading papers and I'm worried about my students using it. It's very obvious that they are. But I hope that that AI is going to give a kind of renewed like energy to the arts, because like you've said a couple of times, it's what connects us, art, it's what makes us human, and we've got to remember what makes us human, because this stuff is not human. So that's sort of where I am hopeful, is sort of like maybe the kind of re-energizing of like the humanities. I'll stop.
Yeah, go ahead.
I say I'm glad you said that, because it's one of the things that I am bolstered by as a theater person, is that it's going to be really hard for AI to get a group of people together to play yes and improv games together. And the big part of this for me is that the difference between the process and the product, that the arts really is not about the product in the end, it's about the process of creation. So yes, you can put some sort of prompt into AI and it's going to give you some result, but that's not actually what art creation is. Art creation is the moment before it becomes finalized. So that bolsters me. I have been now on several groups and panels and nonprofit leader meetings talking about AI and AI policies, and usually they leave me more nervous than when I arrived. Obviously the big thing for me is just like the environmental impact. Like I just got news that there's a data center being built in the Dominican Republic or something, and like, so there's as a small arts organization, there's a lot of push towards like, these are the ways in which AI can make you so much more productive. And then I'm like, yeah, but is the productivity worth that when every time I use it that they're turning off the faucet at my aunt's house? Like, that doesn't add up for me. Like, we've been doing it without that extra productivity all these years. And then there's the complication of like, well, why is it then that the smaller arts organizations or the smaller organizations or the organizations that have a bigger conscience or that are thinking about the predominantly marginalized people that are affected first by these things, why are we the ones then taking the hit of not having the productivity that then all these big organizations are doing? So there's a lot of complication. One of the ways that we've been pushing back is that like there's this big thing about like a lot of flyers are being created by AI, and so like now we have found the funds within our own extra funds that we save for emergencies to hire artists to like literally design from scratch all of our flyers to just like fight back against that and be like, okay, like no one could ever accuse us of having an AI flyer because we literally are commissioning artists now to create our flyers. So yeah, but I blew up a meeting the other day because the whole time they're talking about here are the tools, blah blah blah, and like in the last question I was like, but wait a second, like why? How come we not talked about the environmental? It's been an hour-long meeting and we didn't talk about that. So yeah, it's a hard sell for me to find any reason to use it, especially as an artist, but even more so for just knowing like how bad it is for us.
Yeah, right on. Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say that I take some comfort in the fact that there have been any number of technological paradigm shifts over the last century and change that have fundamentally impacted how we, for instance, make music. I mean, so radio is a good example. Amplification is another. Recording technology is another. And each of these, streaming services, right? Like all of these required of us as an artistic community some adjustment, some kind of rethinking about what's really important to us, about what we're doing. Before amplification, it wasn't possible to have a stadium concert. Right now, all of a sudden, you can have 80,000 people in a stadium together listening to the show. That's a different kind of community. It's a different kind of convening. And I think that if we keep that in mind, and keep in mind that we really make art for ourselves and for each other, then these kinds of paradigm shifts that are bound to continue to kind of be part of our lives might be put in their right place. I think it's inevitable. I think that AI will change our relationship to the way we do lots of things, and probably will impact the way we make and think about art. But at the end of the day, if we hold on to what's important about art along the way, I think we'll be okay. Yeah.
We're having a lot of conversations, as is everyone, and kind of at the core of what we're having conversations about is there is the process of art making, which is the thing itself, and being both an art maker and an art presenter, we're on both sides of the fence, and yeah, it's like to be frank, there are going to be lines drawn in the sand of if it's made by AI, it probably won't come into our spaces. And I think we're going to be going down those paths as well, where institutions and spaces and are going to be drawing those lines, and I think that's their right to, and I think that's important. And we're having deep conversations around, these things are here and they are being used by folks in different departments, maybe not in the artistic programming team, but maybe in marketing they are to help them with copy. Maybe they're not, maybe marketing isn't designing the flyer for the thing, but for digital, when they have to have it in 90 different sizes for digital ads, maybe they'll pop it into an eye, maybe. Those types of things. But I think at the core of what we're having conversations about is how everything, because we are an arts organization that is about culture making and people at the center, really sticking to our mission and our vision and our values, which is art making by people for people. Yeah.
And speaking of which, our last question, What is one thing that the people in this audience can do to support and uplift the arts and the actual human beings behind them in Philadelphia and beyond, the human people who create, learn, teach, host, and sustain the arts? What is one thing that the people who chose to be here today can do?
Get to know your neighbors. There's been some studies that the city's been doing around the arts, and there have been phenomenal studies talking about how there are artists pretty much in every single neighborhood, in every block, on every street. I did a survey of my own block, and there were people that work in the arts or have arts connected that had no idea. And just having those conversations, what do you have going on? Oh my God, I want to come to your show. Cool. Oh my God, you own a restaurant, but you're also doing drag shows. Oh, there's a drag artist at the end of the block. Like, that's how we could connect with our community in real time and learn about what's happening and make a real impact with just like looking at our block. Yeah.
I just would say, do what you're doing now. Like, you guys all chose to come here. It's a beautiful night outside, and you chose to come here and listen to this panel. So I commend you for doing that. Keep going to stuff, and bring your friends. I think that's the most important thing you can do, is participate.
Yeah, go see theater. Make it a night out. There's a lot of theaters in the city that are pay what you decide tickets, or that you can, find a more affordable ticket for, especially if you just call the box office. A lot of times they don't have their cheapest tickets on the actual website. But if you call and be like, hey, I'm a teacher, I'm an artist, you can get those $10 or $15 or $20 tickets. So go and support, and let it be okay if you don't love it, and keep going anyway, because art, like anything, is going to be subjective. So every show you see might not be your favorite show ever. And if you happen to have a rich uncle, maybe encourage them to donate to, if you see a show and you loved it, find the person who you think can donate to that organization. A lot of times somebody else saying, this is a really cool organization, you should donate to them, is actually what gets people to donate to places. And if you feel like maybe you only have so many years left in your life, maybe you want to write one of these theaters into your will and you're into your estate, or maybe not. You could be a young person and still do that. You never know what could happen. But there really are a lot of the theaters that are sustained here in the city is because they have those types of long-term sustainable donations from people's estates and wills and stuff like that. And so it really is something to think about, of how can I, even if you're just donating $10 a month to a theater company, especially for a company like mine, that makes a big deal. We see the people who are oh my God, they donated $10, yay. So just find that one company that you're this is the one company I'm going to support, or this is the one small arts organization I'm going to support, and that is the way to go.
Yeah, I think maybe just a slightly more meta version of that is live your lives, if you don't already, as though and as if the arts are essential and not a luxury. Because if you do that, it'll be an example to your neighbors, it'll be an example, and it will support, just by the fact that you feel that the arts are essential. You'll be going to shows, you're going to be supporting the arts. And I think that kind of engagement and involvement is really what we all need to see the arts thrive in Philly.
Thank you for that. So to Erlina, Napoleon, Martha, and Tim, thank you very, very, very much for taking the time to be here during a very busy time of year. Please help me to thank them.
Thank you.
I know I enjoyed hearing from you and learning from each of you, and I hope that our audience did too. Special thanks to our co-sponsors, the SACS Program for Arts Innovation. They do a lot of great work to support the arts at Penn and West Philadelphia. Check their community initiatives page at www.sacsarts, that's S-A-C-H, arts.org. Our other co-sponsor, Penn Live Arts, I mentioned them earlier. They just announced their 2026-27 season of music, dance, and theatrical performances with a beautiful theme of belonging. So please go support them, take a look at that. And PennLiveArts.org. To everyone who joined us, Penn has a saying that is, we will find a way or we will make one. So I charge you to go find some art or make some, and you'll be glad that you did. So on behalf of the Office of Social Equity and Community at Penn and our wonderful panelists, thank you so much for coming.